Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. In today's video, I'm going to be updating my previous 5-star weapon tier list. There will be promotions, demotions, and plenty of trials and tribulations. Hey you. Yes, you. You're a gamer. Because otherwise, why the heck would you be watching my videos to begin with? And I've got the perfect sponsor for the gamer that is you today, Opera GX. Are you tired of Chrome hogging gigabytes of RAM because of your unhealthy obsession with keeping a gazillion tabs open? Well, fear no more, because with Opera GX you can easily limit the amount of RAM, CPU, and network bandwidth that your browser uses with GX Control. I've got the same gazillion tabs open in both Chrome and Opera GX, and as we can see, Opera GX is hogging just a fraction of the RAM that Chrome is hogging. But wait, there's more! There's tons of customization, classic theme, ultraviolet theme, customizable themes, light mode, dark mode, auto, wallpapers, lights, animations, you name it. The customization is out of this world. There are even free games that the Opera GX team finds and curates for all its users. Unbelievable. Seriously though, that's a really cool feature to be built into a web browser. You can truly discover some hidden gems like this. Also, Opera GX is on mobile and it can be effortlessly connected to the desktop version so you can have a seamless browsing experience between your phone and desktop. And that's just a few of the many reasons as to why millions of gamers are using Opera GX today, and why I'm also using it now too. So what the heck are you waiting for? Just smash that link down below to download Opera GX completely free. Huge thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring today's video. So the last time I did this, it was back in patch 2.3, literally the last calendar year on December 9th. And despite there being 138 days since then, we have had 3 entire new 5-star weapons. That's right, an entire 3 new weapons. Despite the rather paltry number of new 5-star weapons that were added, I've been in a tier list making and updating mood, so this is the video you guys are going to get. So as with any tier list, let's go over the tiers, the methodology used, and the disclaimers. For the 5-star weapon tier lists, I actually made 2 separate tier lists in the previous video. You guys get 2 entire tier lists for the price of a single view. And in case you haven't seen the original 2.3 tier list video, if you want my explanation for every single 5-star weapon, I explained every single one in that video, so be sure to go check that out if you have any questions about a specific weapon. Anyway, the 2 tier lists are the first one, which is a more relatable tier list for free-to-play to low spenders, and the second tier list is a Dolphin Plus focused tier list. For the free-to-play tier list, the universality of a weapon, or in other words, how good this weapon is on many different characters, and also the power gap between itself and its free-to-play alternatives are the most important things to consider. Essentially, this tier list is asking, is this weapon even worth the gamble for your primo gems and for the power gained? Weapons on this free-to-play tier list are only to be considered at Refinement 1, and the tiers on this tier list are as follows. The S tier is composed of the cream of the crop, the crispy top of the creme brulee, the overall best and most recommended 5-star weapons for a free-to-play player. For example, the Mist Splitters Reforged is not only the best option for one of the best characters in the game, Ayaka, but it's also a ridiculously good weapon on every other sword character in the game. But wait, always remember the risks involved when it comes to pulling on the weapon banner. There are 2 featured 5-star weapons on a weapon banner, and just because one of the weapons might be S rank, there is a really good chance that you don't get that weapon. For example, with no previous rolls in consideration, there is only a 37.5% chance to get the actual weapon you want. Then for the second 5-star weapon after the first roll failed, depending on what you got previously, you have either a 37.5% chance or a 50% chance to then get the weapon you want. In the end, it ends up being around 51.5625% chance to get the weapon that you want before triggering the epitomized path. Which of course, if by the time you get 2 weapons that you didn't want, the epitomized path will trigger and therefore the third weapon you get will be the weapon that you want. In other words, the odds of getting a good deal for getting the weapon that you actually want, which is before the epitomized path actually triggers, is roughly equal to a coin toss. Please know that if you have less than 210 pulls for that weapon banner in order to hit basically soft pity 3 times to trigger the epitomized path to guarantee you the weapon you want, there is a really good chance you don't get the weapon you want at all. I highly recommend for those of you that are not the gambling type to be happy with both the featured weapons on the weapon banner before pulling on it. And why did I interject this into the free-to-play tier definitions? Well, it's because of the current weapon banner and the fact that the Mist Splitters Reforged is indeed an S-tier weapon. However, its partner in crime, the Unforged, is much lower, which we'll get to in a bit. The next tier in this tier list is the A tier. A tier weapons are often good to pull for if you have a specific character in mind, or alternatively, there are many weapons which perform similarly to the weapons in this tier list. For example, the Polar Star is the quintessential A tier weapon. It's a great universal bow, but it has some clunkiness with gaining stacks, and other bows like the Thundering Pulse and Skyward Harp are situationally better or even worse than the Polar Star. Meanwhile, the Engulfing Lightning, while being one of the best weapons in the game, for one of the best characters in the game, the Raiden Shogun, isn't higher in the free-to-play tier list specifically because its free-to-play alternative, the Catch, is one of the best free-to-play weapons in the game, and thus the power gap between a Refinement 1, Engulfing Lightning, and the Catch really isn't that big. The next tier is the B tier, which are admittingly good weapons if you have them, but I'm personally not going to recommend pulling for them. Take the Unforged as an example. While it is competitive and even better than the Wolf's Gravestone in some scenarios, it is generally worse in most scenarios, requiring a shield and stack building for it to be just a bit better than the Wolf's Gravestone. The stack building mechanic also really hurts its viability on some Claymore characters like Chongyun and Beidou. However, if a weapon in this tier happens to be on the banner and you have some characters built that can utilize it, then you can decide if the risk is worth it. Next we have the C tier, which are weapons I generally do not recommend. And last and definitely the least, we have the D tier. The D tier consists of weapons that I just don't recommend pulling for at all. I recommend completely avoiding banners that might have these weapons. The Skyward Spine is functionally equivalent to the Catch. Meanwhile, the Donut provides a bit of extra damage on Kokomi, which for free-to-plays, doing a tiny bit more damage on the low damaging Kokomi is just not worth the Primo Gem spent. Again, the main goal of this free-to-play tier list is it worth a free-to-play player's Primo Gems? Next we have the Dolphin Plus tier list. The Dolphin Plus tier list is for those that are willing to spend a bit on their weapons. These players often have most of the characters that they want and are really looking to further power up their account. This list is also focused on endgame combat potential, and even some speedrunning is considered. Refinements are also taken into account here. The tiers for this tier list are S rank for essentially irreplaceable. The weapons in this tier have no alternatives for more than one of the best characters in the game. The A tier is reserved for some amazing weapons that are situationally the best. Many of these weapons are the best in slot for usually just one or so of the best characters in the game, or alternatively they are good on many good characters in this game. Unlike the S tier, however, these weapons are rarely the best for multiple top tier characters. So if you're looking at the weapons in the A tier, please consider the character that it's attached to. The Amos bow for Ganyu is the quintessential example because outside of Ganyu, the Amos bow is rather lackluster. And after that we have the B tier, which are weapons that are occasionally good, even finding some niche opportunities to outperform their A tier colleagues, but generally these weapons are not as impactful. And finally we have the D tier, and sadly these weapons are just power crept. And of course, as with any and all tier lists, this tier list is my opinion. Please take everything with a giant grain of salt. Now let's finally get started with some adjustments to the tier lists. Let's start with the free-to-play tier list, and I'm going to be doing something incredibly bold and promote the Skyward Spine from the bottom of the D tier to the top of the D tier. Some of you guys in the comments below from the last video made a great and compelling argument that yes, even though this thing is roughly equal to the Catch, this is like having two of the Catch. Therefore you can put one on Raiden and the other on Xiangling. With that being said though, this is a weapon that I would completely avoid if it was on the weapon banner, so I'm hesitant on moving it up a tier to the soft avoid tier above. The next promotion is the Elegy for the End. I decided to move this thing to the bottom of S tier. This weapon has just been so good and future proof, and pretty much every single non-main DPS bow character in the game does elemental skill or elemental burst damage multiple times, thus making this weapon incredibly reliable. Again, I believe this weapon to be future proof, and it's already uncontestedly the best in slot weapon for Venti, and situationally the best in slot for many other bow characters. So that's actually it for the adjustments to the previous free-to-play tier list. Next, let's talk about the adjustments to the Dolphin tier list. First is the Primordial Jade Cutter, which I've decided to move to the top of the A tier. We have a new sword DPS character, the Bobaholic Kamisato Ayato, who can fully utilize the Jade Cutter. everything in his kit benefits from this weapon, and it's even situationally better than his signature weapon, the Haran Gapaku. On top of that, it's still one of the best options for Xingqiu and even Ayaka in some very niche scenarios. The next adjustment is I'm moving the Staff of Homa to the bottom of S tier, behind Engulfing Lightning. Lately, I found that unless I'm using Hu Tao, I prefer the Engulfing Lightning for other pole arm damaging characters. Rosaria, Xiangling, and Zhongli all don't mind sacrificing a few points of damage for the perfect synergy with the Engulfing Lightning and the insane amount of energy recharge in combination with the Emblem of Severed Fates. Also, Raiden is arguably the best character in the game right now, or definitely one of the best, so it's got that going for it over the Staff of Homa as well. Again, this is for the Dolphin Pluses who might target some refinements on their Engulfing Lightning, or they just really want to push their Constellation 3 Raiden's damage even further beyond. I've decided to move the Skyward Blade to the top of the B tier. This is for the simple reason of it being great on Bennett for speedrunning continuous chambers in Abyss 12. Sometimes a bit of extra attack doesn't matter, but not having Bennett's burst up for the next floor is run ending. The last adjustment is me moving the Mist Splitter's Reforged into the top spot. As dumb as it sounds, this is mainly because it looks a little weird to see the elegy for the end as the best weapon. Besides that, the Mist Splitter's Reforged is an insane weapon on literally every single sword character in the game, especially when paired with Constellation 6 Bennett. Now that we're finally done with all the adjustments to the previous tier lists, this is where we stand. We need to place 3 new weapons in both of these tier lists, the Calamity Queller, the Kagura's Verity, and the Haran Gapaku. Going chronologically, we first have the Calamity Queller. The Calamity Queller is an interesting polearm as it provides an impressive amount of attack after using your elemental skill. The buff lasts for a very long time, and it's doubled when off field. The condition for activating its buff is also very reliable and simple, simply by just using your elemental skill. For the free-to-play tier list, I'm putting this weapon in the A tier, right behind the Redhorn Stone Thresher. This is a great weapon and is the best in-slot option for Shenhe. However, this weapon does not provide a huge gain to your team damage output when you put this on Shenhe in comparison to other alternatives, like for example getting the Mist Splitter's Reforged for Ayaka. 4-star weapons like the Lithic Spear, Royal Spear, and Wavebreaker's Fin provide a few hundred less attack than the Calamity Queller, which while is quite significant, still isn't the majority of your team's damage output due to Shenhe's limited quill stacks. It's also worth noting that this weapon is good on Xiao and other polearm DPS characters, so it is still deserving of a solid A tier placement. For the Dolphin Plus tier list, I'm putting this at the very top of A tier. If you have Constellation 6 on either Ayaka or Shenhe, or heck, even better, even both, then any additional attack on Shenhe will lead to some broken quill damage output. This is because Ayaka's Constellation 6 multiplies that extra attack on Shenhe with 298% off the top of my head bonus damage from her Constellation. Meanwhile, Shenhe's Constellation 6 allows for infinite Icy Quill procs with basic and charge attacks. As such, that extra attack from the Calamity Queller becomes much more impactful than in comparison to a free-to-play version of Shenhe. The next weapon is the Kagura's Verity. I'm honestly a little bit disappointed about this weapon. They really wanted to avoid power creeping the other terrible 5-star catalysts with this thing, and sadly they avoided the power creep by basically only allowing one decent character to fully utilize it. With that being said, it is a very good weapon on Yae Miko, and if she is your main source of damage, then the Kagura's Verity is a great option. I've decided to put this weapon in the free-to-play tier list at the bottom of A tier. It's teetering near the bottom of the A tier because the Widsith is a common 4-star weapon that many free-to-plays have that is situationally even better than the Kagura's Verity, especially for Yae Miko's burst damage, which for free-to-play players makes up a significant portion of her DPS. Of course, Lisa can also use this thing to its full potential, but yeah, that's it. As for the Dolphin tier list, the difference in elemental skill damage between the Kagura's Verity and any free-to-play option really starts to grow. I've decided to place this above the general use Skyward Harp. Yae Miko at Constellation 2 and beyond starts to heavily rely much more on her totem damage over her burst damage, and as such, the Kagura's Verity is much better on a Yae Miko with some constellations. Sadly, there is still minimal use for this weapon even for Dolphin Pluses outside of Yae Miko and for those hipster Lisa mains. And last we have the Haran Gapaku. I decided to put this in the free-to-play tier list in the A tier, right above the Primordial Jade Wing Spear. This weapon has great stats and a nice unconditional small elemental damage buff. It's the best option for Ayato's normal attack damage, and frankly it's the best option for any sword character's normal attack damage. But since literally none of the other sword characters really rely heavily on their normal attacks, this sword is much more limited in comparison to its OP brethren, the Mist Splitter's Reforged and the Jade Cutter. Keqing and Ayaka are the next largest beneficiaries, and unfortunately most of their damage still doesn't even come from their normal attacks. Finally, its clunkiness of requiring 2 elemental skills to be used is restrictive in many rotations. All in all though, a great stat stick providing crit rate and a bit of elemental damage, and also a great weapon for Ayato. As for the Dolphin tier list, I'm placing the Hirangapaku also right above the Primordial Jadewing Spear. For this weapon, essentially everything I said about it as a free-to-play weapon applies here as well. I will point out though that this is an interesting option for Constellation 6 Shenhe plus Chongyun shenanigans, as it's the new best in slot option for normal attack damage to abuse the icy quills from Shenhe. So there you go, an updated tier list for the 5-star weapons of Genshin Impact. I was thinking about doing a 4-star weapon tier list, but there are so many 4-star weapons. If that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if you're fine with me breaking a video like that up into a few different parts, covering I guess different weapon types, because like I said, there are just so many 4-star weapons. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.